Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome everyone, friends and supporters of the Gray Panthers NYC, to our September 24th Transformation Tuesday. It's called Gray and Green, Mobilizing Generations to Fight Climate Change, as we turn our focus on a key issue under discussion this election season, and especially this week, which is Climate Week, and takes place every September as the United Nations General Assembly meets. Climate Week is run in coordination with the United Nations and the City of New York. The issue of environmental justice has long been a focus of the Gray Panthers agenda, and today we're going to hear from advocates on the front line all around the world who've made a difference. I'm Michelle Arnaud, and I'm grateful for your support for the Gray Panthers movement, which was founded in 1970. And as we were just saying, the struggles continue. Maggie envisioned our mission to combat ageism and promote intergenerational contact, which we strive to do every month with our webinar series. We meet on Zoom on the last Tuesday of the month. All our webinars are recorded and available on our website, posted by our capable tech person, Emily Trask. Our intention is to provide a safe space to change the narrative for how ageism impacts our world, with the goal of making a positive difference. So for today's program, we're honored to have a host of distinguished and far-flung guests who will provide us with guidance on what we all need to do as a group to save the planet. We're going to open the program with recorded remarks from Bill McKibben, who's familiar to everybody as an author, activist, and environmentalist who founded Third Act, which organizes people over age 60 to work on climate, democracy, and racial justice. Then we'll hear from Elizabeth Stern in Zurich, a retired ethnologist and key member of Senior Women for Climate Protection Switzerland, which challenged the Swiss government's climate policies at the European Court of Human Rights. And from California, we have Rick Moody, former Director of Academic Affairs at AARP, now with the Fielding Graduate University, as well as editor of Climate Change in an Aging Society. And on the East Coast, I believe we're joined by Christopher Kocher, who's president of COVID Survivors for Change, who will tell us about an organization he co-founded this year called Extreme Weather Survivors. And then at the very end, time permitting, we have another representative from Third Act, Deborah Popper. So please type your questions and comments in the chat. Hopefully we'll have some time to answer the questions. And now with Emily's assistance, let's hear from Bill McKibben. Emily.
Hello, everybody. This is Bill McKibben from Third Act. What an honor to get to join this panel, and an honor, first of all, just to be able to say to the Gray Panthers that when we started Third Act a couple of years ago, Maggie Kuhn and all the work that she had done was one of our inspirations. I'm glad that we're following in those footsteps. We're now about 80,000 volunteers strong with working groups in most of the states in the country. 600 or 700 of us went to jail this summer outside Citibank in New York City. We're producing hundreds of thousands of postcards a week now for the election. Into the swing states, we're doing what we can. If there was one thing that really motivated us, it was this commitment around climate change. I've worked on that my whole life. I wrote the first book about what we now call climate change, what we then called the greenhouse effect back in 1989. And it's been terrible watching the warnings that we were giving turn into the facts of the moment. The melting ice caps, the rising oceans, the burning forests. That's been terrible, but what's been great is to watch the rise of the movements that are taking them on. I've worked my whole life, volunteered in those movements. I founded with 7 college students a group called 350.org that became the first big global grassroots climate campaign. And mostly I've been working with youth. Those college kids inspired many, many others to take on, for instance, this fossil fuel divestment campaign that's now at $40 trillion in endowments and portfolios divested, the biggest anti-corporate campaign of its kind. But the biggest harvest from that fight were the thousands of college students on one campus after another who learned how to do what they were doing. And when they graduated, went on to form the Sunrise Movement that brought us the Green New Deal. And then, of course, there's wonderkind like Greta and all the other thousands of Gretas around the planet. The kids are doing their thing, which is as it should be, since I'll be dead before the absolute worst of all of this kicks in. But wonderful as that is, um, I heard too many people my age saying, oh, it's up to the next generation to solve this problem, which seemed both unfair and impractical. Impractical because kids by themselves lack the structural power to make change on the scale we need in the time that we have. Who has structural power? If you've reached the age when you have hair coming out your ears, then you have structural power coming out your ears. There are 70 million of us over the age of 60. We all vote. There's no known way to stop old people from voting. And we ended up with most of the country's financial assets. So if we're going to take on Wall Street and Washington, then we need people with hairlines like mine. And that's why it's been so much fun to watch this massive effort grow, this massive effort in collaboration with young people. The very first demonstration we did, in fact, was because Fridays for the Future, the kind of American offshoot of Greta's movement, asked for help taking on Citi and Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, the four big banks that are the biggest lenders to the fossil fuel industry. And they said, we want to do something about these guys because the scientists have clearly told them to stop lending this money. We'd like to do it, but we don't even have checking accounts. Can you help? And we said, sure. And I remember the first demonstration we were at. There were 200 or 300 high school kids there because there's always high school kids. They know just what they're staring down the barrel of. And they were somewhat sprier, so they were at the head of the march. But at the back of the march, there was a whole bunch of us from this nascent third act with a big banner that said fossils against fossil fuels. That seemed the right approach, and we've tried to keep it at least a little lighthearted. We had 100 actions simultaneously in 100 cities in the spring against these banks, and because we're reached the age where sitting in on the sidewalk for 3 or 4 hours is less appealing than it might once have been. We went to the Goodwill store. We got every rocking chair we could find, and that's what we used to shut down those banks. The Times the next day called it the Rocking Chair Rebellion. So the point we've been making is that we have a deep, deep reason in terms of legacy to be taking on this climate fight in collaboration with young people. The polling shows that the two groups who really care about climate change are people under 25 and people over 60. And together, I think we're going to be a potent combination to keep pushing for more action. So many thanks to all of you who are all involved in this work.
Great.
Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Stern from Zurich.
Oh, okay. It's already my turn. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for inviting me. That's really very nice. Yes, so I'm going to talk about the Klimasenioren in Switzerland, the climate seniors for the protection of climate in Switzerland. The next slide, you can see our long journey. So the first 3 red points are our national courts that we had to pass through before we could go to Strasbourg, to the European Court for Human Rights. And I will say a few words about those 3 red points, because you do have, there is no way that you can put a complaint in Strasbourg without having exhausted your national possibilities. And now on the next slide, you see that within Switzerland, we were dismissed 3 times by the court on different reasons, but all 3 of them agreed that we as older women had no right to sue because everybody is affected, impacted by climate change and not us older women, although even at that time, there were already several studies showing that older women die prematurely during prolonged heat waves. And that was specifically true with the first studies that came out about that very hot summer of 2003. There were 70,000 people across Europe who died during heat waves prematurely, and 2/3 of them were women. Now, what did these different courts say? The first one said, oh, you don't want to just cut down on emissions in Switzerland, you want to do it worldwide, so you don't have a right to sue. And the other one said, you are not the only one affected, even winter tourism is impacted. And that was a real blow to us because climate change is really a life and death reality for older women during heat waves, and then being put on par with the impact on climate change. And then the last one, this was the how is it called? The Federal Supreme Court. They said, well, 1.5 degrees global warming has not been reached yet. That's why we cannot complain that Switzerland is not doing enough. Okay, now on the next slide, you can see that we were not sitting around and waiting for the next ruling because we waited each time about a year or 1.5, but we were incredibly active, talking everywhere, all over the place, not just in Switzerland, in Europe, even on the slide where you see those hikers, even taking people up to the melting glaciers, because that's what is most noticeable about climate change in Switzerland, these melting glaciers. So we took journalists up there explaining to them what's happening. So waiting very actively. By the way, within 1 year, just 8 women of us, we added up our volunteer hours, and there were 5,000 hours. And I thought that was pretty impressive. Now, on the next slide, you see our determined march to Strasbourg. So this is our group, or a part of our group. In March of 2023, we had the public hearing, and then in April 2024, we had the final ruling. I will talk about that very soon. And from that moment on, the media attention was just incredible. We could hardly manage in all languages and all over the world. I mean, from Brazil, Argentina, to the Arabic countries, to Australia, New Zealand. Everybody wanted to have wanted to hear our story. And we counted the articles just since this April, and there were 3,200 articles that were published about the case. On the next slide, you see the European Court for Human Rights. I like the building, by the way. And we had based our complaint on the European Convention for Human Rights. We based our complaint on the obligation that the state has for protecting its people. The so-called, what is it called, precautionary principle. and also on the Paris Agreement, like I mentioned before, that we should not go over 1.5 degrees. The track we are on, many other countries also, we are on the track of 3 degrees global warming. Right now, worldwide, we have 1.2, and we all see already the damage that is happening, the damage that it's doing. And we based our complaint also on IPCC, on an interpanel. Now, this is bad that the interpanel climate, yeah, so this is bad, I don't know. I will tell you afterwards. I'm just sorry. I know in German, the Weltklimarat. And we wanted to make sure that all our complaint, not all, our complaint is based on science and not just some weird knowledge. On the next slide, you see that our federal constitution plus the convention of the European Court of Human Rights both include the right to health, the right to life. And that is the basis on which we complained in Switzerland, the articles on the, as part of the federal constitution, also the European Convention. And the European Convention, by the way, is part of our legal system. Now, I don't know how much time I have already used up. On the next slide, you see what was really the big thing, and that is that climate protection is a human right. This is what we were asking for, so to speak, and this is what the definite ruling was. So our joy, of course, was immense. And it made it also clear that the state has this obligation to protect its people from the impact of climate change. And on the next slide, you see that the European Court for Human Rights has come under critique by our parliamentarians. It's a politically highly charged situation right now in Switzerland. But high acceptance we have abroad. Just since April, there were already 11 cases worldwide that referred back to our ruling. And it's very clear that the ruling stays, nobody can take it away. And our future prospects, I always put it on a slide, but then I don't know what to say because we have our big retreat in October where we really retreat for 3 days to talk about our future plans because we won this case, so what's next? And I want to say that this judgment, this ruling that is considered a landmark ruling, a historic ruling already, did not come about by the UN or the European Parliament or any such thing, but just simply by a group of senior women from Switzerland. So, next slide. You see the great joy expressed in this group of senior women who we were celebrating together, and the ruling stays. I have to say that again. I thank you for listening. If you have any questions, because I have gone through it pretty fast, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I'm sure we will have a lot of questions, and congratulations on everything, especially on getting so much coverage worldwide, which...
Well, yes, that is amazing. But when I heard the speaker just before me, I mean, I'm so impressed by what he was telling us. I mean, incredible what he and his group achieved.
So I think at the end of this hour, maybe we can all band together and make a bigger difference. So
Yeah.
now I'll pass the mic on to Rick Moody, who's in California.
I'm in California, but if you look in the chat room, you will see that there are people from Nigeria, Nepal, Seattle, Washington, We've heard about Strasbourg. It's great to see this group of people here. And it's great that Maggie Kuhn started this. I had only one occasion to meet her in person, and that was at the first National Conference on Conscious Aging in 1992. And I am delighted to be here because you've described this as green and gray. And in fact, I'm the board chair of the group. Gray is green. And we were part of, you're based in New York City, which is far from me, but is my hometown. And in fact, in 2014, I was with 400,000 people at the Citizens Climate March in New York City.
Wow.
I even met people who I knew I hadn't seen in years. So it's important for us to remember that we can do something. If I have one message to give you, just one message, it's in 4 words: here, now, you, hope. And hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. That's not original with me. It's not original with me to say, think globally, act locally. The point is the same. It's absolutely true. And this was brought home to me a few years ago. I was in Hamden, Connecticut, of all places, giving a talk at a senior center. I thought I did a good job trying to convey the threat, the crisis, the emergency, whatever you want to call it. But I made a big mistake. I made a big mistake. Why? Because after my talk, which was not a long talk, but I had the slides and all that, an older woman comes up to me as she walks by and she says, "Oh, Dr. Moody, your talk was simply powerful." And then she said, "I'm glad I won't live to see it. I'm glad I won't live to see it." This is exactly the point that Bill McKibben is trying to overcome and has been overcoming. And I have been part of it too, as part of Third Act, Elders Climate Action, all these groups here in this country and around the world. It's called Transformation Tuesday. That's the label that Gray Panthers gave to this event. But every day has to be the day of transformation. Every day has to be the day that we act. My wife sends the postcards. I send 50 messages on email every single day, including today, to lawmakers, business executives, media managers all around the United States. I don't send them to people in Switzerland. I don't send them to people in Canada. I send them to places where I can have an action. The most important threat that we have is not carbon dioxide. It's not methane. It's complacency. It's the belief that someone else will take care of the problem. There is no somewhere else. For those of us who are elders, I'm 79 years old. I moved here to be near here, meaning San Mateo, California, right near San Francisco, to be near our 3 grandchildren, because they will see the results. The day that we moved here in 2020, our then 5-year-old granddaughter was being taken to school by my daughter. And the little girl looked up at her because the sky was orange then, orange because of smoke. And she said, "Mommy, why are we going to school at night? Why are we going to school at night? Here, now, you, hope." If you hear here and now, if you look at fire and flood and drought and heat wave and all these things, you can be demoralized, you can be depressed. That's not the right response. The right response is action, and it is possible. And when we hear what Elizabeth Stern has shared with us, which is so inspiring, it shows us that whether we are here in Switzerland, in Nepal, Nigeria, wherever the people are who are listening to this call, wherever we are, action is possible. Do not be complacent. Now is the time to act. Here, now, you, hope. That's what I have to say.
Thank you for the rallying cry. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Chris, who started a group that is helping people who are being impacted by extreme weather. Chris, are you?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Okay.
And thank you guys for having me on this call. It's been, I know this is my second time, I think, speaking, so I'm really honored to be here again. Let me share a little bit about my background. My name is Chris Kocher, and like Michelle shared, I started a new group this year called Extreme Weather Survivors. but I have worked for about 2 decades building national survivor communities. So I worked at Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms in Action, connecting people who have been directly impacted by gun violence, building trauma support for them, and also connecting them to opportunities to share their stories in a trauma-informed way. And I did that for about 10 years. And so I've seen, firsthand the power of people's stories to build a movement of millions of people here in the United States, around the country. And I think, this is especially true when we're thinking about an issue as enormous as climate change is. When people who are being harmed by extreme weather, are one of the fastest growing populations in the United States. I left Everytown for Gun Safety. I started a group called COVID Survivors for Change, which is how Michelle and I originally connected. And through the pandemic, led that work focusing on supporting children who had been orphaned by COVID, to advocate for more resources for them. And one of the things that I've always seen and been inspired by is the people. I love all the talk today about Third Act, and I love that framework. My mom is big into animal rescue, and so she and I talk a lot about that as well, just about the importance of continuing to give back. I'm here doing this work because of the example that she has set for me, my entire life, and now is continuing to set that example by continuing to be an activist, and always looking to make her corner of the world a better place. And so, we think about in this movement, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about extreme weather survivors. So we are, like I said, new nonprofit. We're building and activating a nationwide community of people impacted by disasters like wildfires and floods and extreme heat and other events like that. And some of these things, we've been dealing with for some time. The hurricanes have happened, wildfires have happened, but the thing that we're seeing that's different is that they're happening with more frequency and with more severity. One of the folks that we work with referred to just a heartbreaking story. We had I live in New York City, and we had 12 inches of rain in 4 hours out on Long Island, close to where I grew up. And he said, the rain just seems violent today in a way that it never was before. And so that really resonated with me, seeing those ways that the climate and the weather is changing. And we know that extreme weather is how people are experiencing climate change. Many people are experiencing climate change. And so what you shared before, too, about that framework of here, now, you, hope, really resonated with me, because the thing that I took away from all my conversations with people impacted by extreme weather is that, these conversations, it is not, this is not our children decades from now. It is happening now. It is happening to people and communities all across the country and the globe. And it's not natural, right? I think words matter. And I think to label the way the climate has changed, the way weather has changed, is natural. It's anything but natural. And so I think that has been really important of what people have shared with me. But the way that we do this, we build and activate our a community of people impacted by extreme weather. So we talk about support groups in English and Spanish. We talk about building online communities, just like you guys have here, where people can come together and learn from each other, and share their knowledge of what it means to be impacted by extreme weather, what it means to navigate FEMA and insurance and all of those things that can be really complicated, and bringing in special webinars with experts around the country and the world. So we have just most recently, we did a panel discussion about extreme heat, recognizing that even in the Southwest, for example, in Arizona, they go 30, 40, 50 days, 60 days with heat above 110 degrees. And I was at a conference recently about extreme heat at the White House. And, one of the city officials that was there talked about, okay, well, when there's a hurricane, we know exactly what to do. We know which agencies we're coordinating with. We know what will be refunded, what the government will cover, what it won't. Extreme heat is this new category of what does it mean? How many days? At what temperature? Who pays for the cooling centers? So in so many ways, we are just at this beginning of this new reality of what extreme weather looks like and how it's changing how government and communities function all across the country. But we know that even within that, though, building that community of people to connect and support each other is incredibly important. Climate change is such a disorienting and disruptive and in some ways terrifying new reality for so many people. And so building that online community and space is really important. Activating, so supporting people as they if they decide to step into that activism, is really important. Advocating for faster transition to clean energy, for more funding for resiliency, for remedies and support for people who've been harmed. And so that's the work that really we're focused on just in the past few months. Like I said, some of these extreme heat webinars that we worked on, but also supporting people advocating for legislation like the Climate Superfund bill to hold oil and gas companies accountable. And just some of the stories that I wanted to share, because I think, I am a big believer that stories move people. And so, thinking about Melissa, who is a small business owner in Vermont, and her business was devastated in flooding that happened last summer. So in order to get her business back up and running, she had to put her house up as collateral and incurred, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 of damages. There was no support in place for her when the flooding happened. And I was just talking to her this week, and she said they just at the 1 year mark of the flooding, so this July, Vermont was hit with another round of flooding. So some of the resources and additional emergency funding that some of those business owners and homeowners were expecting now may have to go to some of the folks that were impacted this summer. So just as we know, what this is happening with more frequency and more severity, thinking about, like I said, Ronnie, homeowner on Long Island, the one who was talking about the rain has become violent, moved into his house, got married in the backyard, and 9 months later, 12 inches of rain in 4 hours wiped out the road behind his house, and the pond that his home was overlooking catastrophically failed and took out the back of his house. And just by a miracle, left 15 minutes before the house was devastated. And so I think, as we are thinking about together, how do we force change? How do we inspire action? I think, thinking about the people who have been most harmed, the communities that are most impacted, centering their stories and voices, even as we all sort of work together to support them, carrying their stories forward is I think, a growing mechanism in the climate movement. And I'm really honored to support those folks who are doing that work, and really honored to be here on the call tonight, or call today rather. It feels tonight, because it's been a long day. I've been running from thing to thing, event to event, but I'm going to drop the website. If you or anyone has been impacted by extreme weather, please share your story. We'll reach out and connect you, and share with you other opportunities to be part of the movement for change. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chris, for everything that you're doing to help people who are suffering from climate change. I see Carla Sand has her hand up. Carla, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would like to maybe pick his brain, because Minnesota, which you don't think of as being a terribly climate state, but it is. And what happened to Minnesota is a couple of years in a row we had rain with lots of heavy, heavy hail. So the physical we can take care of, but when I go to all my political meetings, the biggest thing is the insurance premiums for people, and that affects seniors, have risen way out of sight. And it's a major problem in Minnesota with the auto and the home insurance. Has he experienced some of that other places?
Yeah, no, that is such a spot on question. And actually, remarkably, I was at a conference this morning with folks that are working, and insurance experts that are working on thinking through that as well, and doing some of what I did here, which is just sort of, as they're thinking about the policies and the policy solutions, helping them just understand some of what people who are being impacted or experiencing. Yeah, I mean, it is, insurance is this industry that in many ways was somewhat static for years and decades, right? The actuaries, right? Everything is based on being able to predict. And what we're seeing now is just everything is just changing so rapidly that they are really scrambling, I think, to try to keep up. And I think there are a lot of really smart people who are trying to think through what does the insurance industry evolve into and look like, with the recognition everyone's premiums are going up. Some of that is climate change. Some of that is inflation, but the climate change part of it is a huge driver of the increase in premiums. And so I don't have the answers. I like to joke, as Michelle knows, that I'm a recovering lawyer. So I do sort of have that eye for policy, but I'm new to this space. But that is one of my top priorities, is actually to get a handle, a little bit more of a handle on what those conversations look like and those policy solutions look like, and how the stories that we're talking about here and the people that we're working with can help influence that conversation in a meaningful and positive way.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're also fortunate to have Deborah Popper here from Third Act, and she's going to say a few words about what we can do and maybe a call to action. Deborah?
Great, and thank you for having me. You all saw Bill McKibben, and he indeed is such an incredible inspiration to all of us. I'm here in New York, and I was lucky enough to see Bill, who's here for Climate Week, yesterday down at the city's headquarters in the plaza there, as we had a protest. And that protest was a continuation of a summer full of protests. Every single week we came out and we protested, and the numbers grew and grew and grew. Each week there was a different theme. So that it was elders, but it was the Gulf South that we were worried about. It was climate refugees we were worried about. It was the faith community. Each week it grew and grew. This morning I got to see Bill as we went and protested the TIAA, those of us who are educators and our retirements are dependent upon it. Can't they divest? Can't they think about the future? Really, that is important. And then we walked down the street to our governor's office to hand her petitions to say, sign the bill. Our legislature's passed a bill so that you can now charge the companies that are polluting rather than all of the taxpayers. Okay, so you could and what I've seen over the course of my time being involved with Third Act is the growth in spirit. We are all sharing with each other the need that we feel to do something. And that sharing buoys us up, I think. And then it makes us reach out so that there are any number of other groups that we are working with. It's not my group that has to do it. It's our groups that have to do it. We're putting effort into this election that's coming. There are something like what I wrote down the number, 500,000 elected offices in the United States. 500,000 that we vote for, that we as citizens can vote for. So we have to get out there and make sure we're all voting and talk to everybody. I talked to somebody last week who was saying, talk to everybody. There are ways of telling your stories that will get them to understand what you're trying to say. So you tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and we've got the experience, we've got the stories, we've lived, we've seen what's happened. So I say, let's all raise our hands together and do this together. Because if we don't, not only will we suffer where we are, but all across the world.
Thank you. It's true. We're all seeing it happen. Elizabeth, there's somebody in India says that your landmark success inspired the Supreme Court of India to declare protection from climate change effects. I suppose you knew that.
I knew and I didn't know because I heard it more like a rumor, but not crystal clear. So I'm very happy to hear this. And I want to check, and I was trying to do that sort of like on the side, because we just put together, no, not we, but Greenpeace International, the lawyers of Greenpeace International, put together all the court cases around the world that referred to us. And I just got that yesterday, and I want to check whether India is on it. And maybe this woman you said, maybe can write to me.
Okay.
Huh? Would you, can I?
Yeah.
Who asked? Who was it?
Hari Krishna, would you like to speak? Yeah, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. I have not much to say. I just wanted to say it's me who mentioned this in the chat box, and I
Okay,
provided the link also. And I've been closely following it.
wonderful.
I think more than the Supreme Court judgment, which often gets forgotten. But I think your work and the story of your work, I think we will use to inspire many institutions. That's what I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Well,
Mr.
thank you then. You have an interesting name at the beginning, Hari Krishna.
Yes, yes, I'm from India.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I work
Yeah.
for HelpAge International.
For what?
HelpAge International as a global climate change advisor.
Okay,
Oh.
okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing this. I made a note and I want to check it out, definitely.
Thank you, thank you. Really inspiring.
So Rick, you seem to be urging everybody to write to their sent emails. Is that what we should be doing?
It's that's one thing. Everybody can do something different. Some people, I know somebody who I see every week at in Palo Alto because I'm part of a group that Greta Thunberg founded, Fridays for Future. So every Friday I show up there, but she doesn't have a cell phone that works. She has an old cell phone. If you have a current one, you can send 50 messages a day, all free, composed by volunteers. And these go to people who will read them. Even if they don't read them, they'll hear about them from their assistants. So yes, I encourage people to act in whatever way they can, whatever way they can.
Mhm.
Well, somehow, Elizabeth, you have really mobilized your group to make a global impact.
Yes, which is still very surprising to us. You know, when I think how we started with a dozen women somewhere in a kitchen in Zurich, and now we are 3,500 members, which is a lot for the small country of Switzerland. But it's still, I mean, it's not a huge group, and it's all based on voluntary work, and we are all older than 65. I mean, the average is 73. And these are all women who were activists all their lives, be it in the women's movement, in the peace movement. So they are used to fighting. I don't like that word, it sounds military-like, but for actually just moving forward with some vision they have, some state that is not here yet, but you sort of like drive into that direction. So just being with these women, I tell you, when I met them, I thought, oh my God, isn't this wonderful to have so many women around me who had been activists all their lives, were their heads functioning 100%, even if some of us, you know, the bones hurt and the joints and this and that, but forget it. It's not important. Yeah,
But
we are
you're
still
saying
surprised. We
it's
left that mark.
only, it's no, you don't welcome men into the group? I mean, it's...
Well, the reason why not men, no, we
Okay.
don't, because but that has not to do, I mean, our partners, our husbands, they support us. We have 1,500 supporters, and they are our men and our husbands and our partners. But you see, the complaint was based on us being affected as older women, and only being personally affected by something, we could complain. We could not, men would have to do that for themselves. We would ask, well, how about babies? Yes, we know babies suffer terribly during prolonged heat waves, but we could not take that on, only for us personally. That's why we don't have men, but we
Interesting.
like them.
I was just curious.
No,
Also,
but that's it's a legitimate question, of course.
Somebody, Mark, is urging everyone to read a book called Climate Resilience for an Aging Nation by Danielle Arigoni, I guess, Arigoni. Jack, would you like to ask a question or make? a
Yeah,
comment?
I wanted to make a question that, or I don't know if it's a question or a comment. Uh, Earlier during this discussion, there was referencing the climate march of, I forget what year, that was the huge climate march.
2014.
So, you know, Gray Panthers had been part of that march as well. And one of the things that became evident, which is kind of a subtext of what we're talking about here, is the number of older people who have been climate activists for decades. And but they don't necessarily take the lead. They don't say, here I am. They're usually the people who are in the background. They're doing the difficult work, whether it's folding or distributing leaflets or whatever it may be. And one of the things that I noted is that when we were walking, the Great Panthers contingent was walking down on the west side of on Central Park West. Then when the Great Panthers went by, inevitably there was lots of cheers from younger people, which goes to the point that the kind of solidarity is possible towards working towards climate justice, climate change, the alleviation, not just the mitigation, but the alleviation. And I think that that is a hopeful sign if we can mobilize people like Elizabeth, like you, Rick, and like others, and all of the people. Not only Gray and Green had been a Gray Panthers initiative some time ago, and then at about the same time, Gray is Green kind of got its start. So, you know, there is possibilities here, and let's try to work together to do concrete actions to make a change. Thank you.
I think Todd, okay, sorry, were you going to say something, Elizabeth?
Well, yes, I guess so. Here in Switzerland, it's very clear we have a lot of respect from the young people. And just 10 days ago, we had a pretty long meeting, like a workshop with them, trying to figure out what are their strengths, what are our strengths, and how we can combine and work more together. And I think such meetings or workshops are very powerful.
So where do these young people come from that connect with?
Yes, well, they are already organized within a group, like Fridays for Future, or like they are called here, a climate strike. And that's then easy. You know, you have a group that's organized, so you can contact them, and then you get together and you rent a room and sit together for hours. And it's really wonderful. And also on the 4th of October, we have a big climate march, a demo. And there again, we make sure that each one knows where to meet so that we can walk together, the young and the old.
And where is this October 4th march?
In Zurich.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
see a hand is raised. Wendy Lustbader, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I wanted to underline something in the chat. Mark Venning wrote that we need to include in our actions and discussions the financial frailty of many elders. And where we see this is in the home insurance crisis. And I love that we're talking about actions. And I was thinking about for health insurance hassles, we have Sheba, this organization of volunteers who are well informed. How many times have people been helped by these people? It's an incredible organization. And we need an organization in every state where you can call for free advocacy with your insurer. And I just want to give you one quick example. I happen to be in Florida where my sister is, happen to be there doing something else. And the phone rang. She had just sealed a deal for her home insurance for another year. But the broker called and said, we need another $1,000 today or we're cutting you out. And my sister became hysterical because she didn't have the $1,000. And he said, if you don't pay, we're canceling your policy. It was bullying. So I just said, Carol, can I have the phone? I'm a social worker. Watch out. Anyway, so I'm not going to go into the details, but just to tell you that knowing what to say to this bully changed everything in about 1 minute. And he backed down and said, oh, what she really needs is just to take some pictures of this Ruth and it will be settled. I mean, that's from bullying to inaction, but it needed someone who could help. I just think we should all be helping in every community the people who are being bullied and threatened on their homeowners insurance. That would be a great thing to do, a real action. I was thinking of your efforts, Chris. Very concrete.
So Chris, is that something that your organization offers?
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking about, I mean, we're, like I said, we are like very, 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 very new. So would love to, I dropped my, my email in the chat. Would love to talk more about that actually.
Okay.
Michelle, I just wanted to point out a question, a comment from Jane in
Sure.
Kenya,
Thank you.
and just about their national campaign to plant around 15 billion trees in the next 10 years, and how older persons are part and parcel of this through their participation. And the aim is to reach 30% tree cover and reduce emissions and increase afforestation.
That sounds, is Jane, are you on the call? There's a few Janes. Well, that seems like an effort that we could all support in our communities. So maybe that's something to think about. Although it's hard in the US, Elizabeth. Right now we're facing a big election, and our
Yes.
country is, we're focusing on that, of course. And actually climate change is a big issue that we will be putting our votes down to see what the results will be. And
Yes.
I guess in Switzerland, you're smaller and it's easier for you to connect with each other. Oh, I see. So Jane, do you want to say something about this tree project?
Um, well, it's interesting because right now in the city of Zurich, we have a big tree project because the city council wants to cut down just a large number of trees that are completely healthy, but they are in a way for some underground works. So the idea is to cut them just all down. And of course, there is big havoc about that. Yeah, so trees, there is now a man who actually has a tree museum here in Switzerland, and he says, why don't we just take out the trees and plant them somewhere else instead of cutting them down? Anyway, right now it's this weekend there is going to be a demonstration just about saving those trees because they are completely healthy.
We have to excuse Chris. He has to go pick up his daughter from school. So
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
Chris at extremeweathersurvivors.org for those who want to reach out. Thanks for being with us. And Elizabeth, I just have to add to what you said, because I grew up in New York City, and museums are always increasing their buildings. And I remember very clearly when the Metropolitan Museum was expanding, and my father said to me, and he was an artist, and he said, it is not worth cutting down one tree to expand a museum.
Really?
Yeah.
Even as an artist, he said that. Yeah. Yes.
Because in a city especially, it's very important to have green space.
Yes. But I think that's what's happening in many cities. There are both sides. There are those who are responsible for what we call re-greening the city. And then on the other hand, you have those who are, because of a building, because of some underground cables that need to be placed, you know, what do? You cut down the tree that's in your way. So it's that just both at the same time.
Well, we have tried in New York to have more bicycle traffic and to reduce cars.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, yeah.
and-
Now you were, sorry, you were asking. I'm so sorry. I have my cat in the background. It
Oh,
just
that's-
seems to be going through it. Like, can you hear that? Sounds
No.
awful.
I usually have my cat, but I locked him out.
Well, you know, I put her outside on the balcony, but he came back in.
Ah, okay.
Now I forgot what I wanted to say. That's another old age symptom. What?
Well, I
Anyway.
think it's not. I think that's not true. I think we just have a lot of things on our minds, and you know, it's hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah. But what was it? There was something I really wanted to comment that seemed important. That
Well, we were
you
talking about the
you were asking
greening,
the re-greening. Yes.
and
Yeah.
Jack is pointing out that there is an initiative in New York City. So,
Forgot. Oh no, I know now about meeting each other. Yes, this is very true because Switzerland is not just small, but we really have terrific public transport system. It's just so easy to get everywhere. I mean, even in some remote valley, in a little village back up there, if you wanted to. And I think this does help.
well, I'm
You
hoping.
don't have to take a car to
Yeah, I was hoping that we can end this hour with some sort of action that we can all take. And at least, I guess, what I can suggest is that everybody write to an elected official and express our feelings about how we want to work together. I think Rick has a lot of great ideas. Rick, do you want to?
I've put it in the chat, and
Okay.
in fact, so did Todd Weber. We both of us send many messages each day. It's very easy. Go to that Climate Action Now website, download the app on your cell phone, get started. It takes 5 minutes a day.
And I'd suggest that we commit to being involved both in the presidential level and a down ballot level, because they're all important. So find the climate person that you want to support and do something for them down ballot as well.
Yep.
And there's one hand up. I think it's Joan Graff. Would you like to ask something?
Well, I'd just like to say how much I enjoyed this. I picked up the link from Rick Moody's email that I get weekly, and I found this. I thank you. I'd like to come on every month. I live in Boulder, Colorado. We have had the hottest summer on record. We've had more over 90-degree days than ever. And we've had several fires in August and July because of lack of rain. Wow. So, I mean, that danger is here. And I've only lived here for 16 years. I'm from the East Coast, and I have seen the warming, less snow, faster melting. I mean, it is such a major crisis, and we have to get more young people involved. And thank you for sharing all of your information today.
Thank you. So, oh, Hari Krishna, you have another question or remark? Or your hand is up.
Yeah, just a point to mention that just now that we heard about involving younger people. One of the things that we do, that we promote intergenerational approach to climate change adaptation. and in multiple countries. And at some point in time, I will be happy to share what we do and what are the practices and lessons. Thank you so much.
And there's another hand up, Musa Hussein.
Hi there. I haven't really contributed too much yet. But I heard about this event from someone in one of our networks. I work for a public health think tank, and we do a lot of work at the intersection of climate and health. And I specifically work for the Center for Healthy Aging, which does research and advocacy for older adults, specifically in New York City, but we have some national projects as well. And one area of work we're looking to get more into is connecting older climate activists and younger climate activists. And I know that was talked about a little bit on this meeting. But as a younger person myself who's been involved in climate activism, but is, has such admiration and respect and, loves learning from climate activists, I don't see enough of that intergenerational aspect to the climate movement, at least in my experience. And so one project we're doing with the Center for Healthy Aging is looking to sort of bring more young and older climate activists together. So we're very much sort of still in the planning stages, but we're looking to do more work in this space. So I will put my email in the chat if people would like to reach out to eventually participate in anything of the things we're getting planned. But yeah, thank you so much for this, this space. It was terrific.
I guarantee that I will be in touch with you and we can maybe do something big as a group. So thank you. Thank you for letting us know.
Put my email in the chat.
You're at NIAM?
Yes.
Okay.
New York Academy of Medicine. Yeah, that's up.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. And I guess we've reached our hour. So I'll thank everybody for the inspiration and the motivation to do something that we can all do one thing when we hang up. And thanks so much for Elizabeth coming on at such a, for her, a late hour. And next month, October 29th, we're going to meet again when one of our board members, Meg Laporte, will present on activism against ageism. So please join us then. And I thank everybody for attending.
I thank you again for inviting me, and I say goodbye to everybody. And Musa, who just spoke, you definitely hear from me. I think this sounds absolutely fascinating for me, what you were talking about the healthy aging, or how you called it, climate and health putting together. I mean, that's our topic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay.
And Steve, do you want to make a remark there? You have your hand up? Maybe not. Okay. All right. Well, thanks to everybody and see you next month.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.